The way that midwives help prevent deaths is really the model of care that we engage in. We're very attentive and we're experts in the normal physiological process of birth. And so when you have someone who's really following you and looking at you as an individual, not just numbers, then you can foresee issues that might not be completely apparent on paper, right? So it could be the tension that you feel around birth or life circumstances that we're discussing to help you prepare for labor or the delivery or thereafter. And a critical part of care is the follow-up. So what often happens in the hospital system is that people go to the hospital, not to mention they're often railroaded with interventions without proper informed consent, but then they're sent home and there's not really any follow-up for like another 6 weeks. Then you go back to the doctor or whatever, a nurse might check on you. But with midwives, like we are really there every step of the way, like through the pregnancy, talking to you, addressing certain issues that come up that might be nuanced at the delivery. And then when you're discharged or when we leave your home, we're still coming back for up to 6 weeks, like calling you, texting you, coming by, checking on things.
No, just listen to you, right? Like, what's the thing they call lab coat syndrome or something?
Right, white coat syndrome.
White coat syndrome.
Yeah.
So wouldn't that be heightened during your pregnancy? Like, wouldn't you be more stressed? Because they also
Definitely.
talk about the stress and the blood pressure during pregnancy.
Yeah.
But I think naturally, wouldn't that be higher in that environment?
In the hospital environment? Certainly, because you already, and then not to mention like for Black women in particular, we have a lot of distrust around the hospital because of things that we've heard, things that we've seen, and then also things that we actually experience with like microaggressions and people making assumptions about who we are, how we got pregnant, our marital status, our level of education, all these things. And so we pregnancy is hard on your body as it is, but then to have to experience that kind of stress, it's like a subtle type of stress that can affect you, certainly.
What is the biggest difference between home birth and a birth in the hospital? I know it's a broad question, but just like if you could break down in regards to like from a holistic aspect, the difference.
That's a good question. So if you think about the most intimate events in your life, whether it's intercourse or even things that are private, if you're doing it in a place where it's very public, like the lights are bright, there are strangers coming in and out. I don't know how G-rated this is, but if you were having, if you were in an intimate moment with your partner, would you rather be, in a sacred space where it feels private and protected, or would you rather like just random people coming in and out the room, switching on the lights, you don't know the people's names? That would naturally cause you to be more tense, right? When you're tense, you're inhibiting the production of oxytocin, which is the natural hormone that your body produces in order for labor to progress. So if that doesn't happen, you tend to stall out, you take a longer time, and then here comes the interventions. When you're in a safe environment or an environment that you perceive to be safe, you're giving your body the space to, for it to unfold in the process naturally, physiologically.
Could you please explain the different positions used for home births?
Sure. So you can have the standard bed, right, where you have the bed and you can be in a semi-reclined position. You can use that same bed and be on hands and knees, which is like all fours, which also supports gravity. I bring a birth stool, which is, a mobile stool that we assemble and then we set up, which allows you to sit really low where your legs are separated. And so you're using gravity to help bring the baby down. A lot of people decide they want to stand, so kind of standing and leaning on the bed or with one leg up. The water, of course, a lot of people like water birth, so you could be in any position in the water as well, as long as your body stays in the water.
So how does that work with the water birth in regards to the child coming out? Like somebody has to catch the child right away, or?
Yeah, so it depends. So a lot of times the mom still wants me to catch or the midwife to catch the baby. So we're watching and kind of observing, of course, looking for the head. And when baby comes out, usually baby comes up right away. You might see some videos where baby is allowed to stay in the water for a little bit, but generally speaking, baby comes right away. And then sometimes mom just feels it instinctively herself and she puts her hands there and she receives the baby herself or the dad.
And you guys allow time to run out. It's not that rush like the hospital, right? It could take 15 hours, 18 hours, 24 hours.
For the birth?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we allow time. As long as there's progress happening, you're not on the clock, which is a little bit unlike the hospital where, they're very time sensitive.
Could you share with the sisters and the brothers some things they can do to kind of not necessarily prevent a C-section, but to slow it down so they can see how things play out?
That's a really good question. Yeah. So, first things first, I think having a doula is a big part of that, right? Or having someone who really understands what's happening clinically and why a C-section is being suggested. So if you understand why, you can kind of do a dance with them, a negotiation of how interventions are introduced. So, for example, if you're having an induction, a lot of times, I give you an example, right? And you can do whatever you want with this. But I had someone who had to be induced because their baby was too small. And so we went to the hospital, and the first thing they did was put a Foley bulb in her cervix to make her cervix open and get her to 4 centimeters. That happened, right? There was no medication involved in that. It was a mechanical procedure, something that we requested, right? And so once that came out, her body started to have contractions on its own. But the residents came in at least 3 times to suggest that she get Pt.2, even though she was already having contractions. This is an induction. The purpose of an induction is to get labor started. However that happens, labor has started. And so we had to push back, like, no, we don't need Pt.2. And it took a lot of, pushing back pretty firmly to say, no, we want labor to unfold naturally. So understanding the need for the intervention, if it's timely, if it's necessary, and then knowing when to say, no, I need more time to think about this. And then the way that ended up was she gave birth without any medications at all.
What are other things? I also heard about like repositioning and stuff. Sometimes that helps.
Yep, repositioning, asking them to change your position, more hydration, maybe IV fluids. If it's like a heart tone issue, sometimes the baby just needs a little bit more fluids or a change of position.
So you telling me you can avoid a C-section just by being hydrated? As simple as that?
Something like that, yeah. Changing positions is even more miraculous because it could be that the baby doesn't like you being flat like that. You need to be over on your left side. Yeah. And like for a good amount of time. And believe it or not, the fact that they're listening to the baby continuously, that's not even an evidence-based practice. And so a lot of C-section decisions are made based on that tracing. And that tracing that's not like a reliable source to say that the baby is actually in trouble all the time and that a C-section is necessary in that moment.